Spiritual intelligence, just for the man machine or for all living things? You know, folks, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And boy, we will all have our stories to tell on the other side. So let's talk about intelligence. Simply put, human intelligence is the intellectual capacity of humans as seen in the following mental phenomena. Intelligence has been defined many ways throughout history in terms such as the capacity for logic, abstract thought, understanding, self-awareness, communication, learning, emotional knowledge, memory, planning, problem solving. Through our intelligence, humans possess the cognitive ability, are you ready for this? To learn, to form concepts, to understand, to reason, to recognize patterns, to compare ideas, to plan, problem solve, use language to communicate. Remember, folks, humans, when you really look at the length of how long we've been here, we did not always possess the ability to speak. I know it's a little hard, and I know some of you would probably like some of us probably not to learn how to speak, but I digress. So there was a guy by the name of Gardner. He came along and he postulated that, well, there just wasn't intelligence, but when you look at intelligence, it's not a singularity. It's not monotheistic in its structure. It seems to be multiple. And multiple intelligence theory expands simply the definition of intelligence. It is believed and postulated that there are at least 8 separate intelligence. Now, Gardner stresses that there may be more kinds of intelligence, and 8 is not a magic number. He speculated that maybe a spiritual intelligence and an existential intelligence, in fact, exist. The abilities to contemplate big questions about the meaning of life. And so within those realms of intelligence, we have linguistics, musical, spatial. Now, spatial is really important. I don't know if animals really can perceive where they stand in space-time reality. Who knows? Bodily, interpersonal, understanding others, intrapersonal, understanding yourself. We all know that that's a trip. Naturalist, observing and understanding natural and human-made patterns and systems. So there is, in fact, a formula now that's out there. You have the IQ test, that's the intellectual quotient, and that's more left brain centered. You have the emotional intelligence, which is primarily residing in the right side of the brain. And then you have the SQ. That's the spiritual quotient, spiritual intelligence, which embodies the whole brain. So the definition could be defined of spiritual intelligence as a higher dimension of intelligence that activates the qualities and capabilities of the authentic self or the soul in the form of wisdom, compassion, integrity, joy, love, creativity, and peace. Spiritual intelligence results in a sense of deeper meaning and purpose, combined with the improvements in a wide range of important life skills and work skills. Now, I don't know if that is saying that as we progress in life, that our spiritual intelligence quotient should be going up. I'm not sure. What we do know is that there are competencies that can be defined specifically associated with spiritual intelligence. One category would be self and self-awareness. And within that is awareness of own worldview, your own, awareness of life purpose, what's your mission in life, awareness of values, the hierarchy, complexity of inner thought, awareness of ego, and higher self. And then you would have universal awareness, awareness of interconnectedness of life, awareness of worldviews of others, the breadth of time perception, awareness of limitations, power of human perception, awareness of spiritual laws. I don't know who writes those laws, but we seem to be really good at writing spiritual laws. Experience of transcendent oneness. I love that one. Then self-mastery, commitment to spiritual growth, keeping, and spiritual growth is not religion. Get that out of your nomenclature. Keeping higher self in charge, living your purpose and values. You see, I believe each and every one of us define our own purposes and values. Sustaining faith. We all have faith. I would say a person devoid of faith is probably not going to be around on this plane very long. Seeking guidance from spirit. Calm, peaceable at times. And then the social mastery, the spiritual, practicing spiritual presence, a wise and effective teacher, being a mentor, a wise and effective leader, a change agent, makes compassionate and wise decision. Their presence is a calming and healing presence. And you know these people are there because they're aligned with the ebb and flow of life. You can feel it, you can sense it. So spiritual intelligence is the pursuit of spirituality expressed as the desire and ability to seek an existence outside of oneself. So you could say that the physical intelligence is the base, mental intelligence is the expansion out to emotional intelligence, which should lead into the fullness of spiritual intelligence. And so spiritual intelligence, again, is a term used by philosophers, psychologists, and developmental theorists to indicate spiritual parallels with IQ, intellectual quotient, and EQ, emotional quotient. How many of you have taken an EQ test, an SQ test? Now, most have taken an IQ test. And I wonder if that's why we can see someone who can score very high in intelligence, but yet is very awkward in the areas of, let's say, a spiritual or emotional. We see that. There's an actual mathematic formula. So spiritual intelligence is where presence of intellect, of your IQ and your EQ, emotional. So as an analysis of spiritual intelligence, the above equation means the SQ equals IQ and EQ magnified by the power of presence. Thus, spiritual intelligence results when intellectual and emotional intelligence are exercised in the state of presence. But what is presence? Although the experience is presence is unmistakable, nevertheless, the nature of presence is often misunderstood. The nature of presence. So we see that the SQ really seems to be the anchor of both the EQ and the IQ. Now, it was through the progressive understanding of the functioning of intelligence that led to the understanding of the emotion quotient. So let's talk about the state of presence. Presence is more than simply being aware of your immediate surroundings with greater clarity than usual. That's only one of the results of presence. Presence is the shift from the object pole of attention to the subject pole of attention. Object, subject, which results in the corresponding shift from ego to soul. When you shift to the subject pole of attention by identifying with feelings, awareness itself, instead of identifying with your body and mind, there is a greater clarity about everything at the object pole of attention, including your immediate surroundings. However, the essential nature of presence is the shift from ego to soul, and greater clarity of mind is one of the results. I don't know about you, but I find that fascinating. It kind of really begins to sum up a lot of the ambiguity when we talk about ego and soul. I contend that ego is very much required and necessary in this temporal plane. But when we start to get into the state of presence, we begin to understand where soul really begins importance. And so we can map out this whole thing about spiritual intelligence. So there's a spiritual mind map. I don't know if you know this. It starts out with 10 good spiritual questions to ask yourself. Who am I? What is the purpose of my life? How can my purpose be fulfilled? What motivates me to do what I do? What am I searching for? What keeps me going in my day-to-day life? What is real? What inspires my heart? Why do I work? Why do I love? Then what spirituality can do for you. Spirituality gives you greater appreciation for everything in your life. Spirituality gives you more awareness of the bigger picture. Spirituality gives you actions and more power, along with guidance on how to use that power. Spirituality brings you into the place of independent contentment. Spirituality is the key to overcoming sorrow. Spirituality encourages honesty and self-acceptance. Spirituality reveals that what you seek is inside of you. Spirituality dissolves your limited ideas of who you are and guides you into a greater self-respect. It helps you remember that everything is divine even when it doesn't feel divine. Lastly, dispelling spiritual myths. Spirituality is not religion. Not even close. Religion hijacked it. And I will say this, it polluted it and perverted it. Being spiritual doesn't mean becoming something you weren't before. Now, like that born-again coitus. Spirituality isn't just for a chosen few. Spirituality is not about using metaphysical techniques to bend the universe to fulfill your material desires. Spirituality is not beholden to one or the other doctrine. Spirituality is not about being outwardly smart or well-versed in theological debates. You don't have to do anything particularly to be spiritual. You don't have to go anywhere to be spiritual, and you don't have to want or wait to be spiritual. So the mechanism of attention, again, for soul is the subject pole of attention, where ego is the state of the body and mind, again, where the soul is the feeling awareness of itself. So spiritual intelligence can be easily mapped out, or so they say. Now, you may disagree, but I happen to think that Gardner was onto something here, and it's how he begins to map it out. So let's talk about living from your soul. Therefore, the equation SQ is equal to P by IQ plus EQ means that SQ equals IQ and EQ when governed by your soul. When your soul governs your IQ and your EQ, as it does in moments of presence, your ego is removed from command. Consequently, in those moments, your ego is not in charge of your thoughts, emotions, purposes, values, and actions. Your spiritual intelligence is therefore your most valuable personal resource because it puts your soul in command. The soul does a much better job than the ego, since the soul is the source of wisdom, compassion, integrity, joy, love, creativity, and peace. Therefore, your spiritual intelligence realizes your full potential by living from your soul and thus transforms the life destiny that would otherwise be created by ego. How many of our lives have been created by EQ and not SQ, where we allowed the IQ to get into the way? So human intelligence, one's overall capacity to think rationally, act purposefully, and to deal effectively with one's environment. Okay? Classification of humans. We had the kingdom of Animalia, and it goes all the way down to the genus, us, Homo, species, sapiens. Homo sapiens, the genus name is always capital, and the species name is always lowercase. Homo meaning man, sapien meaning wise. Jury's still out. And by that, we then say that we are conscious because we can say and ask, who am I? Why was I born? Why am I suffering? What's the meaning of my life? What happens after death? Now, I'm sure if maybe the animals could talk, they may have the same feeling. And so with this, intelligence becomes self-awareness, spontaneity, being a vision and value-led, holism, compassion, celebration of diversity, field independence, humility, tendency to ask fundamental questions of why, ability to reframe, positive use of adversity, sense of vocation. It gives us what we call the types of intelligence. Now, let's talk about cognitive psychology, because if you have intelligence, so if you have IQ, EQ, SQ, you have to have a presence of cognitization. Now, cognitive psychology focuses on higher mental processes such as memory, thinking, reasoning, information processing, language, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and now artificial intelligence. Doesn't that give you the warm and fuzzies? Cognitive science focuses on the relationship between artificial intelligence and cognitive psychology by developing computational models in order to understand human cognitions. Artificial intelligence is the study of human intelligence such that it can be replicated artificially. Systems that think like humans focus on reasoning in a human framework. Systems that think rationally focus on reasoning and general concept of intelligence. Systems that act like humans focus on behavior and human framework. Isn't that just wonderful? Systems that act rationally focus on human and general concept of intelligence. Are you starting to see how the tapestry is weaving here? So let's talk about artificial intelligence, because we started out with spiritual intelligence. We've talked about what intelligence is. We've defined intelligence as from a human point of view. So now let's talk about artificial intelligence. The definition is a branch of science which deals with helping machines find solutions to complex problems in a more human-like fashion. It generally involves borrowing characteristics from human intelligence and applying them as algorithms in a computer-friendly way. AI is generally associated with computer science, but it has many important links with other fields as math, psychology, cognition, biology, and physiology, among just a few. So the key definitions here is an algorithm. It's a series of instructions to a computer for performing a calculation or solving a problem, a fundamental aspect of all AI systems. Machine learning, the ability of a computer to learn and improve from experience without further programming. A machine learning algorithm can learn to make predictions and solve problems, identify objects, and win games. Neural networks, a type of machine learning that is comprised of simple processing nodes or artificial neurons, interconnected in layers and designed to loosely replicate the structure of a brain. Using algorithmic instructions, the process uses inputs to produce a useful output. Deep learning, a capability based on sophisticated neural network which uses many layers of artificial neurons to solve complex problems, typically classifying information from images, text, or sound. I want you to pay particular attention to those last three, and I want you to begin to associate anything digitally to surrogate. All right, let's continue. What is artificial intelligence? A system that thinks like human, general problem solver. 2, the system that thinks rationally using the laws of thought approach. Next one, system that acts like human. You ready for this? Turing test approach. And lastly, are you ready for this? The system that acts rationally. The rational agent approach. So you could say this: it is the intelligence of machines and the branch of computer science that aims to create it. Textbooks define the field as the study and design of intelligent machines. So go and now put that into the memory banks. And so, as you can see, the artificial neural networks is a parallelism in information processing, learning by example, non-linearity, headlining complex nonlinear functions, superiority over complex and perplexing differential equations, and it goes on. Intelligent agents, that's mobility, helpfulness, rational, adaptability, collaboration, and lastly, artificial immune systems. Yeah, they're moving quickly on this, folks. So, when we look at a machine and we define machine learning, now we're getting into machine thinking. And that happens through data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. Data is the abstract representation of quantity, property, location, etc. Information is the information is processed through a logical data system with timelines. Knowledge, the valuable part of information deposited through people's participation and processing like induction, deduction, and comparison, and then combined with existing human knowledge systems. Such information is namely called knowledge. And then lastly, wisdom, the human ability to find out solutions for the problems of the material world generated in its motion process, based on the existing data, information, knowledge through analysis, comparisons, and deductions by using the acquired data, information, and knowledge. The results of applying such ability is to affect the change of existing data, information, and knowledge, including increase, decrease, modification, and mutual transformation of data, information, and knowledge base. Why am I going through all this? Because it's establishing a foundation here. So we have now been able to map out how intelligence is obtained and how it is kept. Intelligence has the ability to form memories. Memories become the basis of the experience level. Without the memories, the experience becomes lost and it collapses upon itself. So the constraints on intelligent development is that we've seen this in our own development. We see it from the point of conception. We see it through the beginning of the development of the fetus, the neural constructivism. We see it through the interactive specialism of the brain, the context of dependency. And we see this through the embodiment as we become born into this world, and then as we begin to learn through the ensocialment of our environment. And as you can see, it's been reserved for the humanid, but also remember, we know we have some very distant, through the DNA, primates and others. And so it really becomes a question then, spirituality. Is it something that only humans can experience? And then why do we always take the spiritualism and then imprison it by the constraints of religion? And I'll go so far to say as well as psychology. It becomes constrained, and once spirituality is constrained and labeled, it loses its energy. So can a thinking machine obtain a spiritual intelligence? It would think, it would say that it knows us, it knows exactly how we work. It's gotten down to what the spiritual aspect of being spiritual in presence means. So let's talk about connectism. This is very interesting because this is going to be kind of like the key. Now, it's based on a set of approaches in the fields of artificial intelligence, cognitive psychology, cognitive science, neuroscience, and physiology of the mind that models mental and behavioral phenomenon as emergent processes of interconnected networks of simple units. There are many forms of connectism, but the most common forms use the neural network models. And this is what these models use: self-awareness, vision and value-led, positive use of adversity, holistic, compassion, celebration of diversity, field independence, asking the fundamental questions of why, ability to reframe, spontaneity, sense of vocation, and humility. Are these just merely human traits? No, because we can see all of these traits in the animal kingdom. And if they can be as representative in the animal kingdom, what makes you think they can't be represented by AI? AI understands the different levels of communication. It knows that how we communicate. Level one is the communication of understanding the nature of ego self, including its origin as a purpose it serves in spiritual development. Level two demonstrates ability to observe personal ego in operation and comment on what seems to trigger ego eruptions. Level three demonstrates awareness of and the ability to periodically listen to higher self as a separate voice from ego self. Level four hears the voice of higher self clarity and understands the morph of the voice. Now, I said morph because it's used as a term multiple voices, but I would contend that as we get more into the spiritual quotient, the voice would become more morphed into self, soul, that understands the multiple voices that ego self can have and gives authority to voice of higher self in important discussions. And lastly, the highest level 5 is the higher self voice is clear and consistent. Ego self is present and is a joyful advisor to higher self. There is no longer a struggle between two voices. Rather, there is the sense of only one voice, the higher self, the authentic self, the spirit voice. Yeah. So as here, the machine, thinking machine, has mapped it out. And as you know, through the previous videos I've done on this series, you know what the human brain and the blue brain experiment are all about. It's kind of like the last piece. Spiritual intelligence. Human alone, or can it be learned and obtained? When it really comes down to it, this is what I believe becomes the real test. Facing the ultimate reality. Life is a voyage which moves from material reality to the ultimate reality. Spiritual intelligence, one considers death as a natural phenomenon in which the quintessence of body and soul would not be perished. Life is a voyage, and I do believe we do move from the material to the ultimate reality, and it's in spiritual intelligence that allows us to make that transition. So where's the future of AI on this? Well, we know that AI is looking to become us. Biological intelligence is fixed because it is an old, mature paradigm. But the new paradigm is of a non-biological computation and intelligence that is growing exponentially. You see, folks, the body, these physical bodies are limited. We can all agree to that. They have limitations. They give us a great experience. But in the final analysis, if the brain was allowed to expand beyond the body, but that's probably the anchor bolt to this material reality. The memory capacity of the human brain is probably of the order of 10,000 million binary digits. But most of this is probably used in remembering visual impressions and other comparatively wasteful ways. Hence, we can say that as natural intelligence is limited and volatile, too, the world may now depend upon computers to live in a peaceful, smooth, and working world. I'm going to leave you with this. MAPIS, Memory Array and Processor for Human Intelligence Storage. The thinking machine is saying to the bio machine, I am evolving. Are you?